And I love the color blue, the real bright blue, like the hat May had on at the Daughters of Mary meeting. And since coming here, I've learned I love bees and honey. I wanted to add, and you, I love you, but I felt too awkward. Did you know there are 32 names for love in one of the Eskimo languages? August said, and we just have this one. We're so limited. You have to use the same word for loving Rosaline as you do for loving a Coke with peanuts. Isn't that a shame we don't have more ways to say it? I nodded, wondering where was the limit of her knowing things. Probably one of the books she'd read after bedtime during the month of August had been about Eskimos. I guess we'll just have to invent more ways to say it, she said. Then she smiled. Do you know I love peanuts in my Coke too, and blue is my favorite color? You know that saying, birds of a feather flock together? That's how I felt. We were working on the jars of Tupelo tree honey which Zach and I had gathered out there on Clayton's forest land, plus a few jars of purple honey from the hive where the bees had struck it rich on elderberries. It was a nice color of coordination, the way the Bohemian Madonna's skin was set off by the golds in the honey. Unfortunately, the purple honey didn't do a whole lot for her. How can we put the Black Madonna on your honey? I asked. I'd been curious about this from day one. Usually people got in a rut putting honey bears on them. August grew still, holding a jar in her hand, looking into the distance like she'd gone in search of an answer, and that finding it had been the bonus of the day. I wish you could have seen the Daughters of Mary the first time they laid eyes on this label. You know why? Because when they looked at her, it occurred to them, for the first time in their lives, that what's divine can come in dark skin. You see, everybody needs a God who looks like them, Lily. I only wished I had been there when the Daughters of Mary had made this big discovery. I pictured them whooping it up in their glorious hats, feathers flying. Sometimes I would catch myself jiggling my foot till I thought, it might fall off my leg bone. Jimmy leg, Rosaline called it, and looking down now, I noticed it was going at high speed. Usually it happened in the evenings when we did our prayers before Our Lady of Chains, like my feet wanted to get up and march around the room in a conga line. So now, how did you get the Black Mary statue in the parlor? I asked. I can't say exactly. I know she came into the family at some point. You remember the story about Obadiah taking the statue to the praise house and how the slaves believed it was Mary who had come to be among them? I nodded. I remembered every detail. I'd seen it 100 times in my mind since she first told it. Obadiah down on his knees in the mud, bent over and washed up statue, the statue standing proud in the praise house, Our Lady's fist in the air, and all the people coming up one at a time to touch her heart, hoping to find a little strength to go on. Well, August said, going right on with her pasting, you know, she's really just the figurehead of an old ship, but the people needed comfort and rescue, so when they looked at it, they saw Mary, and so the spirit of Mary took it over. Really, her spirit is everywhere, Lily, just everywhere, inside rocks and trees and even people, but sometimes it will get concentrated in certain places and just beam out at you in a special way. I had never thought of it like that, and it gave me a shocked feeling, like maybe I had no idea what kind of world I was actually living in, and maybe the teachers at my school didn't know either, and the way they talked about everything being nothing but carbon and oxygen and mineral and dullest stuff you can imagine. I started thinking about the world loaded with disguise Marys sitting around all over the place, and hidden red hearts tucked about that people could rub and touch, only we didn't recognize them. August arranged the jars she'd labeled so far in a cardboard box and set it on the floor, then dragged out more jars. I'm just trying to explain to you why the people took such care with Our Lady of Chains, passing her one generation to the next. The best we can figure, sometime after the Civil War, she came into the possession of my grandmother's people. And when I was younger than you, me and June and May and April too, because she was still alive then. All of us would visit our grandmother for the whole summer. We'd sit on the rug in the parlor, and Big Mama, that's what we'd called her, would tell us the story. Every time when she'd finished, May would say, "Big Mama, tell it again." And off she'd go, repeating the whole thing. I swear, if you listened to my chest with a telescope, that you'd hear this story going on in Big Mama's voice. I was so caught up in what August was saying I had stopped wedding labels. I was wishing I had a story like that one to live inside me, with so much loudness you could pick it up with a stethoscope, and not the story I did have about ending my mother's life and sort of ending my own at the same time. You can wet the labels and listen, August said and smiled. So after Big Mama died, Our Lady of Chains was passed to my mother. She stayed in Mother's bedroom. My father hated her being in there. He wanted to get rid of the statue, but Mother said, if she goes on, I think the statue was the reason Mother became a Catholic, so she could kneel down before her and not feel like she was doing anything peculiar. We would find her in there talking to Our Lady like we were two neighbors having sweet iced tea. Mother would tease Our Lady. She'd say, you know what, you should have had a girl instead. August set down the jar she was working on, and there was a mix of sorrow and amusement and longing across her face, and I thought, she's missing her mother. I stopped wetting the labels, not wanting to get ahead of her, when she picked up the jar again and said, did you grow up in this house? I wanted to know everything there was about her. She shook her head. No, but my mother did. This is where I spent my summers, she said. You see, the house belonged to my grandparents, and all this property around it, Big Mama kept bees too. Right out there is the same spot they're in today. Nobody around here had ever seen a lady beekeeper till her. She liked to tell everybody that women made the best beekeepers because they have a special ability built into them to love creatures that sting. It comes from years of loving children and husbands, she'd say. August laughed, and so did I. Was your Big Mama the one who taught you to keep bees? August took off her glasses and cleaned them on the scarf at her waist. She taught me lots more about bees than just how to keep them. She used to tell me one tall bee tale after another. I perked up. Tell me one, I said.